Yeah, so a couple of years ago, Jess and I were living in Hawaii in the married housing dorms at BYU Hawaii, and in a little studio apartment with my son Brandon, who was just a baby at the time, and our mother-in-law was actually staying with us. So there was four of us in a little studio. Then all of a sudden there was a report that it was going to be rainy, and it rained and didn't stop, and there were floods. And with the flooding came a power outage, as well as the water system was down for about a day and a half or 2 days. And during that time, we realized we weren't adequately prepared for that type of situation. Well, at first, it didn't seem like it was going to be that big of a deal, but then you didn't have any water to drink. We couldn't use the restroom. No one could bathe, and then probably the biggest problem is when you have a newborn baby who needs milk that you mix with baby formula or water. Then we couldn't prepare milk for him. Mm-hmm. And so during that same time, a lot of other people were running into the same problems we were, because everyone else were young couples living in dorms, and many of them had small children. So there wasn't really many places you could reach out for help at the time. So we found ourselves in kind of a rough situation. It wasn't easy, and it made us realize, had the situation been more severe, or had the power been out for many days instead of just 1 or 2 days, it could have been a real problem for us.
Well, I was actually in a hurricane about a month before the big earthquake here in San Francisco. I was living in South Carolina, and they have big hurricanes there, and we were surprised because the city I was living in was like 100 miles inland, and yet we had tremendous damage. These huge trees that were over 100 years old just fell down. I mean, roots and all. But people's belongings in their yards had blown around and gotten lost, and a lot of power lines had fallen down. It was really dangerous to try to drive. Well, two things really surprised me. One was how boring it got as soon as the sun went down. I didn't realize how dependent I was on light or any electrical gadgets that help us be entertained until we go to bed. It wasn't safe to go driving to see a friend. And then the other thing that was really surprising to me was how stressed out I was, even though I didn't have any damage to my own property. I found that I was really unsettled by these huge trees and power lines that were down, as well as the stories I heard about people I knew who had a tree caved in on their living room, or huge water damage, or someone in their family had gotten hurt. It was really unsettling to me, guided me in the kind of food preparation, food storage strategy that I had going forward.
I can also relate to you in the 79 earthquake. I believe it was 79. At night, we had some tremblers, and my neighbors were a little upset about it because they had never experienced an earthquake. So we invited them to our house. Everyone calm. Because, if you have, we always ended up with neighbors who've never experienced an earthquake before, and they came to our house upset. And so what I did, I got my Coleman stove out, and I got my lanterns out. I lit up because the electricity wasn't working. And so I had my Coleman stove. I put some fuel in the tank, and we boiling some water, and we had some hot dogs in the refrigerator. But we also had food in our pantry. We could make raviolis. We could have pasta. We can have canned foods, beans, whatever, and it would be just fine. It was fine for the situation.
In an emergency, one thing to look for or smell for is the smell of gas. If you don't smell gas, don't touch your turnoff. Because if you turn it off and there's nothing wrong, you're not going to get the gas turned on right away. And if you turn it on by yourself, you're not going to make PG&E happy. So if you don't smell gas, rule of thumb, don't turn the gas off. If you do smell gas, come out to your main, and there's a valve right there. And what you do is you slip the tool on and you turn, and that'll turn the gas off to everywhere in the house. This is your main gas. This is handmade, but you can buy them at Osh or any emergency supply house.
Well, we've had a couple of incidents where I guess automobile accidents have taken out the power line, and we've been on the generator for several hours in one case actually. So it's there, and it's a 3.5 kilowatt generator, runs on gasoline. It's rated at 4 kilowatt surge, but in a steady state, it is best to run it at 3.5 kilowatts or less. The thing you have to do if you own one of these, and particularly if you're storing gas for it, is to put something called stable in the gas. Our modern gas has additives, which kind of turns it to jelly after about 6 or 8 months. So by putting the stable in, it avoids that problem. The other refinement is that rather than running a bunch of power cables into the house, extension cables, I've set this up so I can put this jumper up to our power outlet. And I don't know if you want to show that. I can put this jumper into the power outlet, throw a breaker that takes us away from off the PG&E line, and then just run directly into the house from the generator and use the house wiring for the distribution. Now, of course, you have to run around and shut off all the non-essential power when you do that, so that you can just focus on essentials like freezers and refrigerators and a few lights, etc. So that's kind of the approach I've taken.
I'm always worried that a chemical spill or an earthquake might happen, that I'll be stranded on the freeway for a long time, or, you know, wherever. And so I have a car kit that I think is almost like a 3-day kit. I have 3 or 4 bags inside the bag, so that if I need to take off walking, I'll be able to grab just the things that I have, the things that I would need most readily, like the fire extinguisher, a hammer, tool. All right, so this bag has my food. Which I think is pretty practical, you know. You have your ravioli and some fruit and utensils. This bag has clothes and water. Okay, so just like stuff.
Your colors are be there. You know when you went to a barbecue, you just sent me out.
Actually, no. He went to hang out.
In 2009, due to some vandalism, the main fiber optic backbone was cut, which affected the all communications in South San Jose, down into the valley, into Gilroy, Morgan Hill, etc. So all communication was lost. That includes emergency communications, all kinds of electronic point of sale for stores, for gas stations. Just all communications went away. So as a result, SARS, Sunnyvale Amateur Radio Emergency Services, was activated, and I ended up going down and setting up an emergency station at St. Louis Hospital, and doing all their emergency communications through the day and on into the night. And so that's what all this is about. This is called a Go Kit. This is something I can just immediately throw in the car, and it's everything I need to set up emergency communications. This is a handy-talkie, which has limited range, but by using an extended antenna, I can actually put up a 32-foot antenna and pretty much communicate all through the valley with that. The Go Kit has everything I need to accommodate just about any situation. The other thing that's inherent within this is that some of these events might last a long time. So I have enough survival gear in here to get me through a day or so with water and food, etc. So that's what this is all about.
Sandy and I have gone through both CERT and SNAP training. SNAP training is good, it's more administrative. CERT is more hands-on and light search and rescue. And so, one thing that they taught us is that in an earthquake or a disaster, there's going to be damage to the houses, and when you go up to the house and you're going to go in, you put a great big cross here, just a line. And that lets anybody that coming by know that there's people inside the house. You go in there and do what you have to do. You're doing light rescue by moving stuff around and getting people out from under furniture, and you bring them outside. After everybody is outside, you mark the area with how many people, and then you put a second line there, and that lets everybody know that the house is clear.